Okay, I want you to think about the scariest horror movie you've ever seen. No, not the cheesy ones. I mean the one that really truly got under your skin, where the suspense was just unbearable, the monster felt way too real, and that feeling of dread kind of followed you home. Remember that feeling? That tightness in your chest, the quick breath? Now, imagine you weren't just watching it. Imagine the screen just dissolves, and suddenly, you're the main character. And there's no script, no director to yell cut, and absolutely no way out.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? Because that's exactly what a nightmare is. When you're in it, every single part of you believes it's really happening. You jolt awake in bed, heart hammering against your ribs, totally drenched in a cold sweat. The terror is so real, so visceral, that for a few confusing seconds, maybe even minutes, the line between the dream and reality is just gone. Your body is flooded with adrenaline, your muscles are clenched. You are in full-blown fight or flight mode, reacting to a threat that isn't even there.
You know, we tell ourselves that, right? Phew, it was just a dream. We say it to try and calm our racing heart. But if it was just a dream, why does the fear feel so incredibly real? Why does it have the power to wreck our night and sometimes cast a shadow over our entire next day? Well, this isn't just about some spooky fantasy. This is about biology, it's about chemistry, and the amazing, complicated wiring of our brains. So today, we're gonna go deep. We're pulling back the curtain on your brain's own private horror studio to find out not just how, but why your mind produces these terrifyingly personal movies. So to get started, we really need to make a clear distinction here. We are not just talking about the occasional, run-of-the-mill bad dream, like showing up to an important meeting in your underwear or suddenly remembering you have a final exam you never studied for. I mean, those are awkward for sure. But for millions of people, sleep isn't this peaceful escape it's supposed to be. It's a recurring, predictable battlefield, a place they start to dread long before their head even hits the pillow. Now, before we go any further, let's just get one thing straight. This is a really common human experience. As you can see here, a staggering 85% of adults say they've had at least one nightmare in the last year. So if you've ever woken up in a total panic, you're in very, very good company. It's just part of our shared human wiring. The real problem, the thing that takes it from a common thing to a clinical thing, is when every once in a while turns into once a week or even every single night. And that's when we cross over into the territory of what's actually called nightmare disorder. The key thing to understand here is the mix of frequency and impact. It's not just about having bad dreams a lot. It's that those dreams are so upsetting, so vivid, that they physically disrupt your sleep, waking you up over and over. And crucially, that chaos starts to bleed into your waking life. It can look like being tired all day, being irritable, having trouble concentrating, and just this nagging underlying anxiety about what horrors the night is going to bring. In this slide just perfectly illustrates the cruel, self-feeding loop that makes this whole thing so awful. It all kicks off with one terrible nightmare. That experience is so scary that it creates a genuine fear of going to sleep. You start to associate your own bed with terror. This anxiety makes it harder to fall asleep and stay asleep, which of course leads to sleep deprivation. And here is the truly unfair twist in the story. When your brain is sleep deprived, it tries to catch up on the stages it missed most, especially REM sleep. This is something called REM rebound. The problem? REM sleep is exactly where our most vivid, story-like dreams and nightmares happen. So the very act of being tired makes your next dream even more intense and more likely to be a nightmare, which, you guessed it, just makes you even more afraid to go to sleep. It's a perfect, vicious cycle. Okay, so we get the cycle. But how does the brain actually build these terrifying experiences from nothing? What's going on up there neurologically that makes a dream feel so completely and totally real? Let's take a little tour of your internal film studio, the one that needs no cameras, no crew, just your own brain chemistry. It really boils down to a perfect storm, a 3-part recipe for terror. First, you need the right stage. That's REM, or rapid eye movement sleep. It's the phase where your brain is incredibly active, almost like you're awake. Second, you've got the director of our horror film, a part of your brain called the amygdala. During a nightmare, it's not just active, it's hyperactive. It's working overtime. And finally, the third, and maybe the most critical ingredient, is that a key person is missing from the set. The security guard, the rational adult in the room, is completely offline. This right here is the absolute heart of why nightmares feel so real. Your amygdala, that ancient, primitive part of your brain that handles fear and threats, is firing on all cylinders. It is screaming, danger, danger, we're all gonna die. But the prefrontal cortex, the sophisticated, logical part of your brain right behind your forehead that deals with reason and context, is basically asleep on the job. That's the part that, when you're awake, would step in and say, hey, whoa, calm down, that's just a shadow, monsters aren't real. Without that filter, without that voice of reason to put the brakes on, the fear coming from the amygdala is experienced as pure, raw, unfiltered reality. Your brain literally has no choice but to believe the terror is 100% real.
I mean, on the surface, it seems completely backward, doesn't it? Why would evolution ever design a system that lets our brains terrorize us when we're supposed to be resting and recovering? It feels like a bug in our programming. Well, scientists don't really see it as a bug, but maybe as a feature. They've got a couple of really fascinating theories that try to explain the purpose behind all this pain.
The first big one is called threat simulation theory. Think of it like a flight simulator for your brain. This theory suggests that nightmares are basically a biological fire drill, an ancient tool that lets your brain practice how to respond to life-threatening situations, but from the total safety of your bed. By running these terrifying simulations, being chased, falling, being attacked, your brain is rehearsing survival pathways, so if you ever face a real threat, your fight or flight response is already warmed up and ready to go. The other leading idea is emotional processing theory. This one suggests that dreams, and especially nightmares, are the brain's way of sorting through and trying to make sense of tough emotions from your day. Think of your mind like an office, and at night it has to file away all the day's paperwork, the stress, the anxiety, the sadness. A nightmare might just be the brain's messy, clumsy attempt to file away a really difficult emotional event.
So that's the problem, that's the cycle, and that's the fascinating science behind why it all happens. But just knowing why isn't always enough, is it? And this is the most important and most empowering part of this entire explainer. You do not have to be a passive victim in your own nightly horror movie. Let's get to the toolkit, because science has given us real evidence-based strategies to fight back. You can, quite literally, learn how to rewrite the script.
And the most effective, most researched tool we have for this isn't a pill, but a powerful mental technique. It's actually considered the gold standard treatment for chronic nightmares. And the best part? It's based on this simple, beautiful idea. If your brain can learn a scary script, it can also learn a new one. This is a technique that takes you out of the terrified audience and puts you right in the director's chair. It's called imagery rehearsal therapy, or IRT, and it works exactly like it sounds. Step 1. During the day, when you're safe and calm, you write down the details of a recurring nightmare. You get it all out of your head and onto paper, turning this shapeless fear into a concrete story. Step 2, and this is where the magic happens. You consciously rewrite the story. You don't even have to change the whole thing, just a part of it, usually the ending. You change it from something terrifying to something neutral or positive or empowering or even just plain silly. Step 3, you rehearse this new dream. For 10 to 15 minutes every day, you close your eyes and you vividly imagine the new version, playing it over and over in your mind. You are actively carving out and strengthening a new neural pathway for your brain to follow while you sleep. And you can get as creative as you want with this. The whole goal is to strip the nightmare of its power. So instead of being chased down a dark alley, maybe you rewrite it so you turn a corner and there's a puppy party. Instead of the monster catching you, you turn around, and like the slide says, it shrinks down into a tiny, harmless little mouse. Instead of that terrifying feeling of falling, you give yourself the ability to grow wings and fly. By rehearsing this new, better outcome while you're awake, you dramatically increase the chances that your sleeping brain will just default to the new, safer script you've practiced so well. You're basically teaching your brain that there's another way for the story to end. But what about right in that moment? You know, when you jolt awake at 3 a.m., heart pounding, convinced the monster is still in the room? Well, there's a protocol for that too. The single most important rule is, do not stay in bed stewing in that fear. Get up immediately. Change your environment. Go to the living room. Turn on a soft light. Break the physical connection to the place where the terror happened. Then ground yourself. Use the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can physically touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This literally pulls your brain out of the horror movie and forces it into the real world. Finally, just do something calming until the adrenaline fades. Read a boring book, listen to quiet music, and then, only then, go back to bed. So let's just end with one final thought, a way to reframe this whole topic. Nightmares are, without a doubt, one of the most awful experiences our brains can cook up. They feel like an attack from the inside. But what if they aren't malicious? What if they're not an enemy you have to defeat, but a signal you need to hear? Maybe a nightmare is just your subconscious mind's very dramatic, very clumsy, but ultimately well-meaning way of waving a giant red flag, trying to get your attention about an unresolved stress, a deep fear, or an emotional wound from your waking life that you need to address. By understanding the science and using these tools, you can completely change your relationship with them. You can go from being the terrified victim in the movie to being the curious and empowered director who can not only change the ending, but can finally understand the story your own mind is trying so hard to tell you.